We're back out at the big lake once again, and today we're talking about a sneaky trick the pros use to catch more fish on those sunny days. It's so easy, anyone can do it. Stick around, you don't want to miss this one. Got him. That's not bad. That one's not bad. Oh. And here is this video's featured comment. Congratulations! If you would like to have a chance to have your comment featured in an upcoming video, all you've got to do is leave a comment. And now, on with the video. Welcome back to Lowbrow Fishing, and in previous videos we've talked about how fishing on sunny days can be exceptionally rewarding. And there's a lot of guys who they just don't like doing that. They go out when it's cloudy, they go out when it's windy and rainy, and that's fine. Those are also great times to fish, you know, if you're willing to adjust your presentations, willing to adjust your tactics. But there's something that the pros do that you can only do on a sunny day, which is play around with shade lines. Use those shade lines and those shadows to your advantage. And they do it in such a way where they can maximize how that darkness, how it covers the bass, how they hide in it, how they use it for cover. Now, what do I mean? Well, during a bright sunny day, you know that there's going to be hard shadows cast by overhanging brush, by docks, or, you know, structure of any kind, whether it's above the water or below the water. But we can use this depending on the sun positioning in the sky to maximize our efficiency on the water. Now, what I mean by that is, do you want to fish with the sun to your back, or do you want to fish it with the sun to your face? Now, I prefer to fish with the sun to my face, and I'll explain why. Because when the sun is coming at me, when that sun is facing me, then that means that those shadows are being stretched towards me. That means that if I'm facing some overhanging flooded brush, or if I'm facing some trees or laydowns or anything, then that means that I'm on the dark side. I'm going to be on the shady side. See, as that when the sun is shining in my face, it's casting the shadows toward me, so I can more easily fish those shady pockets. When I'm pitching, when I'm flipping, when I'm skipping a worm up under flooded brush, when I'm skipping docks, when I'm fishing riprap, when I'm doing any of those things, how that shadow lays, how those shadows are falling is very important on my mind. And recently, I've really been thinking about it, and I've really been noticing it, and I've been trying to maximize that potential. So let's go out on the water, and I'll give you an example of some of the shade lines, some of the examples of what I'm talking about. All right, another day, another beautiful, glorious day out here on the big lake. We got the NACO rig tied on, and we are going to attack these shade lines today. Well, we do that every day, but I'm going to show you something different today. Today we're talking about today we're going to be talking about why the sun position matters. Why the position of the sun in the sky should do a lot to determine how you're going to fish. You know, I mean, it really does matter. There's a reason why bass choose the areas that they choose. And we're going to kind of explore that and see if we can exploit that. You know, that's just one of the things that we want to see if we can't use to our advantage, right? I mean, that's what you're always looking for, things to use to your advantage. And the sun and shade lines is one of those things. And the sun is one of those things that we can use to our advantage. So I've got the sun pushing the shade this way, right? So this is the bank I want to fish, as opposed to the other side, you know, which has got some shade, but it's deeper. That shade is on that far side over there. That shade on that far side over there, you know, it may be holding fish, but that shade is pushed back further because the sun is beating down on that bank. But on this side, we may be able to draw some of those fish out that are further out as that sun is casting more shade out across the water. And that's one of the things I always try to do, is I try to keep the sun in my face, as it were. If you can keep the sun position in front of you, you can really exploit those shade lines. And it doesn't just apply to fishing flooded brush. I mean, there's hydrilla. You can see all the way back in there, right? You see all that hydrilla? You can see it's poking up above the surface right there. All of this and through here is just one big flooded hydrilla mat. And one of the things that you have to bear in mind is how those shade lines are under the water. How is that sun casting? And you can see that the shade on the hydrilla is going to be on the backside, on the backsides of those plants. And that's something you have to consider whenever you're casting to those plants. See that shade line right there? How it extends out, you know, 8-10 feet over the water? That's kind of the stuff that we're looking for. We want to keep, basically, if we can fish with the sun in our face, and you can use the shade lines to your advantage. You know, I can still skip up underneath the brush, but I don't have to skip nearly as far, because that, you know, that shade line is going to cover a lot of that. There's a lip and there's a ridge right here at that shade line that gives bass access to that deeper water, you know, because you know the bass are going to want deeper water, or at least access to it.
All right, so you see those shade lines, you see how they fall across the water, and how on one bank they're extended way out into the water, but on the other bank it pushes right up underneath the brush. That means that those bass on that side are going to be further up in there. Now, they're not going to be impossible to get out, but you are going to have to fish further back in there to get bites. Where on that overhanging side, when the sun is falling that way, and those shadows are hanging out over the water 8, 10, 12 feet or more, that's much easier. Those bass are more willing to come out and inspect your bait. It's all about strike zone size, isn't it? How much range those bass are willing to go in order to inspect or bite or whatever your bait, lure, presentation. So we want to maximize that. We want to expand that if we can. And having extra shade, looking at which way the shade lines fall, is a great way to do that. It very much improves and maximizes our efficiency when on the water. Today, you know, I did that. That was pretty much what I was thinking about when I was out on the water. Obviously, you know, it's a very sunny day today. The winds are fairly calm. The water was fairly slick. Now, thinking about how the sun is in the sky and how those shadows are going to set up as the sun progresses through the sky during the course of the day, that's something that was very much on my mind today. Now, the past few times I've been out here, I've been watching those bass bust up on bait. And, you know, I fished around there. I've been fishing a bladed jig. I've been fishing the hover rig. I've been fishing fluke style baits, shad impersonators. And while I've had a little bit of success, today I made another important discovery. And if you're still here in this part of the video, this is a bonus tip. Just because you see bass busting doesn't mean they're busting on shad. They can also be busting on bluegill, which I found out is exactly what they were doing here today. I was getting a few bites on shad impersonators, but when I switched to a bluegill impersonator, as you see here, I tied on this swim bait, a really nice swim bait, and well, things didn't end so well, but I learned a lot by doing it.
All right, I have a big old swim bait tied on here. I don't know, 3-inch, 4-inch swim bait. And I'm going to give this a try because I just want to see what I can do with it. I mean, that thing just looks so realistic in the water. It's like 3 joints on that thing. So it's a swim bait, not a glide bait. I didn't bring any glide baits with me. Kind of wanted to let it go. Kind of want to let it go down just a little bit. There we go, I got him. Oh, he hit it pretty good too. Oh, I lost it. Dang it. Oh no!
So by playing those shadows, by playing the way that the sun was setting up and fishing behind the hydrilla or up underneath the shadows, right, trying to use that shadow and that cover to my advantage, and by trying to figure out what those bass were busting up on, in this case I found that they were busting up on bluegill, on shellcracker, on sunfish in general, then I was able to adjust my presentation accordingly. And well, unfortunately, I lost a really good swim bait, but I did learn a lot, right? Almost instantly, I was able to get a bite. It was a dink, ended up losing my swim bait, but I found out that that's what they're busting on. That's why a lot of times we see those bass busting up and we're throwing a shad imitator. We go up there with a fluke. We go up in there with a buzzbait. We go in there with a topwater, a spook or something to that effect, but they're all white or they're silver. We don't get anything. So sometimes it might be a really good idea to switch to something more like a sunfish or a bluegill or whatever you have on your body water, alewife, goby, perch, something of that nature, because that may be what they're busting up on. Well, when I was able to put those pieces of the puzzle together, right, the shade lines, noticing what the bass were doing, and letting that dictate what I was going to throw, I ended up throwing something that I never thought I would be throwing much of, and that is a jackhammer stealth. I'm not the biggest fan of a jackhammer. I know. That's a taboo subject. Everybody loves a jackhammer. I'm not the biggest fan of them, but I'm telling you what, I'm getting to where I really like that jackhammer stealth because this water is exceptionally pressured. And that jackhammer stealth really came through today. It was the one that started generating those bites because it was a more silent vibration, a more subtle vibration, which was still calling those fish from quite a ways away. And the way that it was colored, the way that I had set it up, it was very much like a sunfish, like a bluegill. So I ended up hooking into some really nice fish. And as the day progressed and those shadows moved across the sky, and I was watching how those fish were relating to the structure, relating to the cover, and busting up on the fish and chasing them, well, I let that dictate how I fish, and I was able to really get some nice bass. So there you have it. Make sure you're mindful of how the sun is in the sky and how those shadows are spreading out across the water. Use that to dictate how and where you're going to present your baits. Also, remember, just because you see bass busting up, that doesn't mean that they're busting up on any particular type of bait fish. It could be whatever's plentiful, whatever's in the area, or just whatever they're in the mood for. In my case, they're busting up on small bluegill and small sunfish, which blew my mind. And when I adjusted my presentation to account for that, that's when the bites really started to pick up. Thanks for watching Lowbrow Fishing. We'll catch you in the next one.